The previous video gave a brief introduction to Poizone. This video will go on to explain how to set up Poizone to work in standalone mode, as well as giving a tour of the relatively simple interface. To initially set up Poizone to work in standalone mode, you are required to select Audio and MIDI preferences. This is done from the Options menu at the top left hand corner of the interface. The first choice facing you is which type of driver you wish to use. Generally, if you have the option to select an ASIO driver, then that will usually be the best to choose. Other driver types are more geared towards running consumer level sound cards for games and multimedia. ASIO allows Poizone to operate with a lower latency. To simplify what this means, latency is basically the delay between someone pressing a key on the keyboard and the sound coming from the speakers. It is a side effect of working with computer audio, and the key is getting the latency as low as possible without putting too much of a strain on your processor, and without any audible glitching in your sound. If you find that this is happening, then you may need to increase your buffer size or lower your sample rate. Sample rate determines the quality of the audio you will hear. 44.1 kHz is CD quality standard, and will in general be fine for most people. Setting this higher will increase the audio quality, although above 96 kHz there is a point of diminishing returns. That's even if your audio interface will be able to go that high. Also, the higher you go, the higher the increase in the strain and processor usage. The buffer size in conjunction with the sample rate determines how long the latency is. Ideally, you want this to be set to as low a setting as your computer and audio interface will allow. If you find that you then use too much processing power, or that the audio has artifacts during playing, then you will normally find that changing this setting to a higher buffer setting or lowering the sample rate will fix the problem. This button here can call up the ASIO control panel for your interface, if applicable. If it is, please see your audio interface's documentation for further details on this. Moving on to the actual interface itself, you can see that each section is clearly divided. At the top level you have your master controls. This contains a section where you can scroll through your presets, as well as having some of the more generic controls. The MIDI section is the part of the interface where you can change your modulation and pitch wheel parameters. LFO is short for low frequency oscillator, and allows you to have a parameter vary up and down over time. The envelope section allows you to adjust the attack, decay, sustain, release envelopes, with the one on the right dedicated to amplification and the other capable of multiple destinations. This central section houses the oscillator and filter controls. Moving right, you have the deceptively simple arpeggiator controls. These controls vary the parameters of the effects, and lastly down the bottom we have an on-screen emulation of a keyboard. That gives you a brief rundown of the interface, and in the next section I'll move on to look at the sound source itself, the oscillators and how the various filter options affect these sounds.